Minutes, so it's 6:20 right now, and we've got Dave. We're going to talk about 9 levels of Agile help, and stay tuned.
So yeah, still haven't got the system yet set up where we can do 2 lapel mics, one for each speaker. So either we use this, but you got to know to turn it off, or I think it'll be fine if we just go down. I think you guys are fine for projecting and stuff like that.
We're pretty interactive with the audience.
Yeah.
So the boom mic is better, so you can hear the audience.
Well, I would even say if the audience starts saying stuff, like we can hand this to them. It actually works good.
Mic on?
Yeah. Should be.
Check.
No.
Okay, so we're still streaming. So do you want to pause that?
Yeah, you can cut this. This is off now. Like I got it off. Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah, we'll just have you guys do the boom mic.
Awesome.
Here.
If we need to hand off, we can, and then the boom mic is a good primary.
And then if we don't do this, just if that person that asked a question gets corrected and repeat. George, you know these guys, right? Looking forward to seeing you again on the 5th.
It's easy to lie. But it's still.
Yeah.
Is there?
This.
Yep. Yeah, because you can see it pop up. So
Can
just
we-
kill this.
Check and see how they sound.
Check.
So you go.
And that is just like really audio. I mean, I've got it on. So now it's like, it's very sensitive. So we could, yeah, that's what I figured. So we could dial this guy back. Now it's probably more reasonable. Is it more reasonable now? Or we just leave it at 0, which is what we normally have it set to. It should be fine that way. But how's it sound now? Check.
Oh.
Yes, I'm gonna kill this.
I'm opening your warmer for you. Just FYI. So you won't be surprised, like, hey, this one was already open. It's bad.
And just, so this isn't the introduction. In a little bit, Mark is going to introduce everything. This is that part before everything starts. Could you guys help us run an integration test? So during our presentation, we're going to go use this URL at the top, colev.com/DavidBujard529, which is not my college savings fund. At all. If you would go ahead and vote on this nonsense question, that would prove that you can successfully integrate. All right? So please use your phone. Somebody asked me if they should bring a laptop. We said we're not expecting any laptops. If you've got nothing, don't worry about it.
What's a package shirt? That's something I'm supposed to know.
An interesting question. Basically, the shirt I'm wearing, what is better? The shirt that I'm wearing or the vest that Mr. Dave is wearing?
Because we're pretty much the same, except that he wears Green Bay Packer shirts and I wear vests.
So thank you for helping us with the integration test, and we're going to carefully not steal Mark's thunder. What's that?
I'm sorry, not that I'm a Redskins fan, but I gotta stay true to territory.
My small son once asked my wife, so why are we Green Bay Packers fans? And my wife is not really a sports fan, and so she kind of said, well, your dad's from Wisconsin. And I realized the trap immediately. But before I could say anything, little son speaks up and says, well, we're not from Wisconsin. So I had to step in and explain, no, son, we're Green Bay Packers fans because they represent all that is good in the world.
You understand, when a game goes on, the whole population.
Actually,
It's like a town of 125,000 and a stadium of 70,000. So.
I lived in Green Bay for almost a year. When the game goes, nobody is on the road, and everything is like.
That is fascinating.
Anyway. I see the response is rolling in. Thank you, guys.
No. Thank you. Clearly validating my costume choices.
Wow, that's selling, isn't it?
Yeah, we could switch it.
So we're gonna have talk.
I'm gonna switch.
Who's talking?
We considered this as an early batch. Sorry. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Over there. You've got that.
Hi, everybody. So, welcome to DC SUG. I am not Brian Schober. I'm Mark Hepler. I've been helping run this group for a little while, so I thought I would come out and do the introductions today. So, welcome to 9 Levels of Agile Hell. This is DC SUG. Is this anybody's first time here at DC SUG? Great. Well, welcome. I hope you enjoy it. Please introduce yourself to the folks around you. It's a pretty friendly group. So, let's move on. Okay, so for those that aren't aware, this is a Scrum Alliance group. You can get SEUs for these if anybody is interested in that sort of thing. And we're here to talk about Agile, Scrum, Lean, XP. So hopefully you'll get some good advice out of this. If there are any topics you're interested in hearing about, please let us know. If there's any topics you're interested in presenting on, please let us know. We're always looking for people to come in and do presentations. So, DC SUG is sponsored by Excella. This is our space here. We do a lot of training here. This is basically our training facility. We provide the food as well. The other sponsor is Kaizen Co. That is Body in the back of the room there. Body provides Agile coaching, certification training, CSM, CSPO, ACSM, ACSPO, CSD. My metal letters, is everything?
You got them all.
Okay, good. Excel also does training, does coaching. We deliver solutions We provide Agile support for organizations. So a little bit of everything. Okay, there are a lot of different meetups that are hosted here that we are involved in. All sorts of things around technology, BA, program management. So if there's anything else that you're interested in, please look it up, and you may find yourself back in this space for another round of pizza or something like that. So training. So Excel has an active training organization. You can see the various types of training you can get here. We have constant rotation going here in the ATX space here, and we also do private training as well if you wanted us to come to your location. Similarly, Kaizen has training classes as well, also offered both publicly or privately. Okay, so right now Excel is hiring, looking for a little bit of everything: technology, Agile, program management. So if you're interested, please see somebody in the room. Can everybody from Excel raise their hands? Nora, George. Okay, great. So we want to offer an opportunity, if there's anybody else here in the room that is looking for people, if they would like to make an announcement in the room. Anybody like to pop up and looking for?
Hey, so my name's Jeremy Webb. I've got a couple opportunities for some Agile coaches. Could be a Scrum Master transitioning to an Agile coach role, if you've done it a few different places, or an experienced Agile coach. Okay.
Any other people with openings? Yeah.
So Blackstone Technology Group is hiring Scrum Masters, coaches, and DevOps engineers.
Great. Any others? Okay, is there anybody in the room who's looking for a position? Yeah?
I'm looking for an Agile coach openings, and I'll definitely connect with both.
What a coincidence. Yeah. Who would have guessed? Anybody else? Yes.
Hi, Martin. I'm looking for data scientist roles.
Okay, we're definitely looking for data scientists. So I'll be talking to one of us.
Hi there. I'm looking to transition to like a business analyst role. I work in healthcare right now. I'm looking to transition different.
And I saw him. Yes.
Yeah, my name is Vicente. I come from a creative background, but looking to transition to project management via Agile and Scrum methodologies.
Great. Anybody else? Okay. One of the things we want you to think about while you're here, we love to get feedback from people. So at the end, we'll have cards available, green, yellow, red. If you think it was great or not so good, please just drop a card in the basket. If you can give us some feedback on what you thought was good or bad, that'll help us improve for the future. So keep that in mind, and I'll remind you again at the end. Okay, so today we have David and David, right? So David Bujard is an Agile coach. He's with Blackstone Group, as he mentioned earlier, and has been doing this for I think 16 years or so, and is active in many of the meetups here. So we now have the newly minted Professor David Fogel. He just started a very interesting job that you should ask him about afterwards. Has been about 20 years in IT and has been an Agile enthusiast since about 2008. So they are going to take it from here. Is there anything else?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
I'm just going to take a note card and then just pass the rest down. Take one, pass it down. And around, take one pile for yourself and move down, and then the other one to that group. We're going to do a bit of a cold start. So what we're going to open with is we're going to explain what those 9 levels of Agile Hell are, and then you'll vote on which ones you want us to talk about and focus on.
If you have not already done so, can you go ahead and go to pollev.com/davidbujard529? Because frankly, the Packer shirts need to catch up to the vests. All this is a quick integration test that allow us to verify that you can give us responses throughout our presentation. The prompts get a lot more interesting from here on out.
All right, Camille's going to do the note card, so
I'm going to do what?
You're going to need a note card. Here we go.
Note card.
Yeah, just need one.
Yep.
And then just No, no, we'll collect them later.
What you want me to write, hacker shirt?
Hold on to that for now. Hold on to that for now. Just log in with your phone and.
So what? Okay, do that. Alrighty.
All right.
Here, phone.
If everybody's completed our integration test, foleyv.com/David Bujard 529. I'm going to test drive our presentation for, let's see, Agile 2019. The good news is we're giving the same presentation. Oh, my. Yeah, there it is.
In about a week.
In about a week at Agile 2019. We hope you'll come. If you're coming to the conference, please look us up. I will promise you that what we do next week will not actually be the same content as today, as you will find out in just a little bit. We'll see what. We've already got our introductions. How else would you like to introduce yourselves?
Oh, we'll get back to that later.
All right.
Let's first talk about the house.
All
And
right.
then you can vote on it, and we'll talk about us while they vote. So to start off, there's no transformation hell. This is where you have started an agile transformation and you've hit a stabilizing point where you just feel like you're not transforming anymore, or you don't even know where to start with your agile transformation.
We've encountered too fast hell, which is an organization that's perpetually pivoting and never actually getting anywhere. It's always responding to the latest emergency, not able to actually engage in strategic planning or intentional change.
Another one we've seen is product owner hell, and this has two kind of opposite things. One is like the product owners who are too engaged, they think they're project managers, and then there's also the ones that are just not absent. And so how does the team know what they should be prioritizing, or how to clarify things? So.
All right. Let's see. Try again. There we go. Interestingly, we've encountered 3 variations on no trust hell. Think of no trust hell as the big circle in a Venn diagram, and collaboration hell and stovepipe hell as being inside, smaller circles inside that. No trust hell is where a stakeholder, often this is a leader. I've experienced it as a customer, but it's a key stakeholder who simply does not trust in the other players in the systems, their abilities, their benevolence, their desire to actually deliver well, or their competence, and think that perhaps even if they try, nothing will happen. So no trust is a particularly challenging one.
Right. Collaboration hell is sort of within a team. So the team itself is not collaborating. It's an aspect of no trust, and so there's key things that we have found help with getting out of it, escaping from that particular hell.
Stovepipe hell is the same dynamic, only it's within an organization at large. So different parts of the same organization struggle to collaborate with one another. So different they struggle to work across divisions.
Too big hell is when your project is just too big. Agile, we think of those smaller teams, 7 plus or minus 2, right? But sometimes there's just too much going on, or it's just too vague because it's so big it's hard to see forest for the trees.
20 team release trains.
Yes.
Plus.
And you'll see it all the time in government, and frankly, whenever I make a comment about government being too big, people will point out, have you encountered large banks or any other large organizations? Also true across organizations is leadership hell. So this is an observation, as one coach kind of quietly confided to me. It's like, an organization can only be as agile as its leaders. And so we have a chance to talk about what can you do when a leader is by their own actions, not acting with an agile mindset, not seeming to get to understand what Agile is about or how to support it.
Joanna Rothman's one of those agile rock stars I'm a big fan of, and she once said that the thing about IT is that 85% of the problems are actually human resource problems that are interactive. The other 15% are also human resource interaction type. But it takes a little longer. That said, there are some aspects, some problems that are actually technical problems, and we can talk about those as well.
Well, those are usually people problems too.
That's true.
Because it's the decisions folks make.
But it's all a matter of emphasis, and we're glad to talk about whatever you guys most highly prioritize. So I'm going to remember that our poll EV. I'm going to move to our next slide, and we're going to ask you. Oh, it's not. Let's see. Hold on. I'm going to have to click escape from our slide. It's getting grabby with the screen.
There we go.
All right. So if you go to that same polyb.com/529, you should now see a different prompt. And it is a prompt of 9 different hells, and we'd like you to prioritize them. You should be able to click on it so you can move the ones that you think are most problematic, the ones you'd most like to hear escapes from, move those towards the top. The ones you're less interested in, move those towards the bottom.
And while you're doing that, we'll introduce ourselves. So I'm Dave Fogel.
I'm David Bujard.
And I'm an Agile enthusiast.
I'm also an Agile enthusiast.
I happen to be a geek dad.
A geek dad. I'm twice the geek dad of Dave. I have 2 boys.
I am the founder of the DHS Agile Chat and Chew.
I am currently the operator, the host for the DHS Agile Chat and Chew. If you're in DHS, come talk to me afterwards. I'll connect you.
I'm a federal employee.
I'm a contractor.
So there's where we start to differ. I spent 10 years in the Army.
I was a developer before I became a coach.
I wear vests.
I wear Packer shirts. So, other than that,
So you can tell us apart.
all right. Meanwhile, I see that our responses are beginning to come in, and we're going to let you kind of give you a little bit of time to all chime in, and when the screen stops setting down, we're going to record what are the most highly prioritized hell. We commit to covering the top 5 most highly prioritized hell. If there's time, we'll even hit a 6th stretch hell.
This is one of the big, over all Agile projects, one of the biggest silver bullets you can have is to remind your whole team we're not going to do everything. Dave and I want to talk about all these hells and all the solutions that we have seen and observed and felt. But we're only committing to 5 as prioritized by you all.
We'll also spend the most time on the couple most highly prioritized.
All right, things are kind of stabilizing, so I'm going to write them up.
Slides and all this supposed to work?
Should be
Down. I just got it.
Got it.
Uh-huh.
All right, number 1, we've got leadership. Number 2, we have no trust. Number 3, product owner's hell. Number 4, stovepipe hell. Number 5, too fast hell. Note I'm saying this too fast, I can't keep up with it. And number 6, should we ever get to it, is no transformation hell. Outstanding. So let's see. I'm gonna see if this toggle slows us down a bit. So we're going to talk first about leadership hell. Just to recap, leadership hell is really all about top-down issues. And what I'd like to prompt you to do is tell us in one word, how do people feel in leadership hell? It's the most highly prioritized one. I think a lot of you have some experience in being in an environment like that. How do people feel?
And if a word resonates with you, please type that in. So you can actually do more than one word, but you do one word at a time. So if frustrated resonates with you, do frustrated. You can type in multiple words if you can't put it into just one thing. If you really need to do a phrase, make sure you do an underline, an underscore in between your 2 words. But otherwise, if you do word space word, it'll count it as 2 words.
All right. So some examples of leadership hell is, I had one client who we're talking about Agile delivery, we're talking about working on the most highly prioritized thing, we're talking about not making promises we couldn't keep, and instead focusing on what was right in front of us and making sure that we deliver first and then make plans on what we're going to do after delivery. Completely with me. And he said, well, Dave, you have to understand, right now, with my boss, I'm not allowed to think. Right? He was giving an example where his boss was being a little bit too directional and describing exactly what he had to do. So that would be an example of being in leadership help.
So that really hits on the frustrated thing, and I think also the disengaged. It almost seems like some of the leaders they parachute in and then step out, and it's hard to pull them back in.
Right. I had one organization where a product owner, it was actually a portfolio manager, came to me and said, you know, I need to get the product owners who work for me to show more initiative. I don't, you know, they never seem to do it, so I have to step in and kind of do their jobs for them. And is there anything that you could do that would help get them to be acting with more initiative, taking care of things on their own? And so as a consultant, I had to step back and say, well, the right answer here is not for me just to say, it's you. You're part of what's doing it. By stepping in and doing their job for them, you're making them frustrated and disengaged and helping them display all the symptoms that you don't want. If I had simply said that, I think she would have gotten appropriately angry, reminded me I was just a contractor, and pointed out that she had other things to do. So that's not the way to tackle leadership help. Instead, what I tried to identify is what is she already doing, and how could I further support that? So already she was identifying that she wanted to improve the performance of the people who were working with her. And so my challenge would be, how can I yes and that? How can I magnify that into a solution in this challenge, in this case?
So there's this thing, integral spiral dynamics. I never remember which order those three words go in. But does anybody know what I'm talking about? So there's this idea that there's specific maturity levels, and there's some really complicated explanations of it, but kind of think of it this way. There's a fire chief, and when they're in the middle of the fire, they have to be really command and control. You go over there, you go over there, you save those people. Just after the fire, they might say, hey, how you all doing? I'm looking for a little bit of feedback. Do you need to skip the next shift? Did you wear yourself out? Maybe you need to take some time off? And then a week later, they might have this big powwow meeting about like, what supplies do we need and how do we reorder? That person has taken on multiple roles, multiple ways of attacking problems. But a lot of people have difficulty switching their mindsets. So they'll be command and control all the time because that's the organization they were raised in or brought up in. So if you can yes and their personality style. I had a supervisor, a leader, who was extremely command and control and never took time off, but was really encouraging of everybody else. You take time off. I want to support you, but he himself would not do that. And so the response was, well, how can you expect everybody else to not follow your example of not taking time off? You need to start doing that if that's what you want people to do, if you want to take care of us. And since you're going to eventually take time off, you need to pick one, maybe two people that you trust, and you need to train them, coach them to act as if you were there. They have to understand your vision that well. So the point is, this command and control person was not, I did not ask him to stop being command and control. I asked him to filter it through 1 to 2 people that person did trust. It varies from leader to leader and where they are in integral spiral dynamics, but if you look at that, there's a lot of cues on how to take a person at their level, and don't try to adjust them, because a person's weaknesses and their strengths, that's kind of where they are. We can hope that they mature or change to the situation like that first fire chief I mentioned. But really, we have to try and yes and them, as Dave said.
So I can give a couple more examples on leadership how and how can you work collaboratively, progressively with a leader to see if they're ready to explore another part of living out who they are and perhaps in a more productive way. Does anyone else here have an example that they want to share of their escape from leadership help? If you've got an example, we'd love to hear them.
What do you mean by escape?
Escape.
So you were in leadership help, and so for instance, my escape, I had a command and control boss, and my escape from hell was saying, yes, and I'm going to help you be command and control and help the organization be free of their command and controlness at the same time. So go ahead, Camille.
I was working with a product owner one time, great guy, and he was having a problem with his chain of command because they were trying to make so many modifications to the software that no one was going to want to use it. I knew that, he knew that, the whole technical team knew that, but they had thought that, you know, the more changes, the more new things, the better. And what we did is we sat down and we just wrote down, you know, a 3x5 card, what all of these things were, you know, how they wanted to make this kind of restriction and that kind of restriction and that kind of restriction and that kind of restriction. And the pile was like this. And if you've ever, you know, dealt with electronic tool systems, that all gets lost after the first, you know, 3 or 4 things on it. And he took that, he skipped his boss and went to his boss's boss and he showed her that. And then she said, wow, no one's ever going to be able to combine their credit cards. He said, yeah, that's what we've been trying to tell you. But something that visualized it so that they could see there's a lot of leaders that get really kind of stuck in the tools they're using, and the tools hide things.
Terrific example, and I just want to repeat a little something. Guys in the back, I think you're noticing that the video stream is having difficulty picking up what we're projecting, and so that's where we're playing with the lights. And Camille, when we were talking about an escape, you had a gesture to say you created, I imagine, 3x5 cards describing changes, and then made a big stack out of it. You made it visible in a tactile, physical way in order to provide feedback and help somebody who didn't want to really admit what everybody else had already seen, and let it come home to them in a way that was not threatening and was not undermining their authority. Sir?
Yeah, so it's a simple one really, but I had I guess the exec at the company who was the top boss, and he used to have that habit of Slack or HipChat initially. He would HipChat people, message people at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. after that, you know, and he was in the office and everyone else was home. So on my team at that time, which I was forming a new team, I don't know, I still to this day don't know if it was the right thing or not to do, but it never came back on me in a bad way, but I just told them don't respond. And I was able to have a conversation with him that, you know, you don't mind if they don't respond because I'm telling them not to respond, right? He's like, yeah, sure, it's fine, they can get to it in the morning. But they initially all panicked, thinking like, wow, it's my first week and he's messaging me at 9 p.m. And, you know, within my team, I was able to set the culture like, no, work it finishes when you go home, you forget about it, rest and come back fresh. So I guess I was kind of creating a subculture within the bigger bad culture that he had already made.
That's an awesome one, putting on boundaries. So we've kind of talked about 3 escapes from leadership hell. Now we passed out those note cards. So part of what we wanted you to do is kind of capture some of these that are particularly powerful for you, especially if it's the hell that you voted for. And we'd like you to leave here with at least a couple of escapes that you can start working and implementing. So we talked about 3 really for leadership hell. One was yes and, one was adding transparency, and one was adding boundaries.
One of the things I loved about your boundaries story is not just that you established the boundaries down, you communicated back up the chain and say, hey, you don't mind that I did this, do you? Right? And so communicating to the leader in such a way as you affirm their wisdom by taking a productive action that you've outlined specifically. And in particular appeal to something that they already value. Hey, they're going to get to this first thing in the morning, right? Right? That's something that that person may have already valued, and you've just reinforced instead of kind of getting into an argument or getting into contention with the leader. So that's leadership hell. It's a significant challenge. It had something to be navigated with grace, but please go to that yes anding and appeal to that leader's existing strengths. They're executives or leaders for a reason, and so ride what got them there and help harness it for the good. All right. Our next hell is, let's see, no trust hell. Can you remind us what no trust hell is?
So no trust hell it's quite frankly the big circle in the Venn diagram. A lot of these other hells, not just collaboration hell and Stovepipe hell, but a lot of them could fit into no trust held. And this is where we don't have necessarily confidence in each other, or they don't have confidence in us. It could be that two organizations just don't see eye to eye, and so therefore they don't have that ongoing trust and collaborative experience.
So my prompt for you is, in what do people do? What actions do you observe people doing when they're in no trust hell? What actions do you see as doing? And if you would, just go to pollev.com/DavidBujard529 and just enter in a single word. Avoid spaces because the system thinks they're separate.
I put not talking and it's saying talking there.
Yeah, and there's going to be a not somewhere. Yeah.
So, so if you want to
hyphenate
phrase
if you need.
NOT_talking. Yep. And by the way, sometimes we go on and on because we have anecdotes and experiences and we focus on the hell and not the escape. If we're going on, please feel free to interrupt us. Please feel free to maybe even just give a visual signal, like a little fist pump maybe if we're going too long. We're not getting to the escape. That's the point, right? The hells are the catch, but the real delivery, what we hope for you all is to get a way to make your organizations better.
So what's striking me about what's coming in already, the biggest one is just CYA, right? So defensive behavior, which of course cover your assets. That's what it means, right?
Yes.
Some financial.
Your aspirin.
Yes, cover your aspirin. And that's what I often say, you know what? You really can't deliver anything out of a defensive crouch. But that's what, when you're in no trust hell, that's essentially where you are. The person who is not extending the trust is in a defensive crouch. If I trust you, things will go badly. It'll blow up in my face. And that is also what everyone else in that relationship, the people not being trusted, they're also in a defensive crouch. It's like, oh, I better go consult my contract and do exactly what the contract says because I don't trust that this, because clearly my client doesn't trust me, for example. And you could extend that in a number of ways.
This is a lot of what keeps organizations from actually going DevOps, the development environment and the engineers, and they don't have a good working relationship. And because they don't trust each other, what do? They build extra steps in the procedure instead of making it more streamlined because they don't have that trust.
Right? And I saw here over-documenting, right? It's a variation on that, which kind of over-processing. Looking at all the words that are up there, there's a lot of I'm not going to say lying, but there's a lot of camouflaging of activities. Not saying, not doing what you really think, not saying what you really think, and that's the predominant thing you'll see in a no trust hell. As soon as you see all this hiding, right, then you realize I'm working in a no trust hell environment. What can I do that would build trust amongst the different parties here?
So Dave, it's what some folks call watermelon project management. Anybody heard that term? So you report things as green, and you keep saying, oh, it's green, see, it's green, the project is green. And then at some point, it does fall apart, and everybody's like, wait, this has been red the entire time. It's a watermelon. And so that gets to one of the things that we can do in order to escape from the no trust hell, and one is to create some transparency. So to openly say, these are the things that are going wrong and the things that we need help with.
And I've encountered one scenario where people were legitimately unclear, but they were reluctant to be transparent because they had a justifiable expectation that if they were transparent, it would be career limiting, right? And that happens all the time, and that's tough. That means you both have to be transparent and you have to begin planting the seeds that will change that dynamic. And in this, I'm highly indebted to Paul Booz, who at one of the meetups, probably in this room, described a process of gaining trust, which is essentially start with the smallest thing that you actually are trusted to do. If someone tells you, I wouldn't trust you further than I can throw you, then you have, okay, about 3 feet then, right? Okay, I have some amount that I actually am trusted, let me deliver something within that scope. So your small trust means small scope for delivery, actually deliver it, and then reset. A review. You said that you wanted this, I have delivered this, and then look to grow that. That should mean that you're trusted your benevolence. Oh, okay, you can deliver something and you're not trying to screw me over. All right. You said that you could deliver something, and by God, actually something happened. All right. Then that builds trust a little bit more in both benevolence and competence. And then you take that slightly larger scope of trust and deliver something appropriate to that slightly larger scope. And then you keep iterating on that. So the escape from no trust hell is fundamentally about delivery. And because you're not going to be trusted to deliver something big, start small.
Yeah, that's our big escape from no trust hill is start from small. I like you haven't done that one before. So this is improvisational, quite frankly. Just no farther than I can throw you. Yes. So,
I think these are good suggestions. Wouldn't there be a step before that try to find out why there's no trust before we even try to deliver a value or something that you start trusting?
Yes,
You also want to try to do a pulse check. Why? We need to find out the why. Because here's the thing. Agile, it's a beautiful thing, but there's so many people. Why? Because they followed the Agile fever. I call it bandwagon.
Right.
They did that years ago, and now they're paying a price for that.
Right.
And that's where Agile coaches come in, and companies like mine and your company come in and try to correct the mistakes they made following Agile fever. So the trust that's where the biggest problem is. First comes in for the leadership, the trust. They've been burned.
Yeah.
Now we got to figure out what exactly happened. We got to do some kind of pulse check, and we can't get the medicine right away, but we got to figure out what exactly happened before we even take the step of building a trust with a small amount of talent.
I got a couple of, you've jogged a couple of points. So there's a whole bunch of Agile podcasts. Agile Uprising happens to be one of my favorites. And this past one that they released, there was a quote from there that Agile is unfortunately a victim of its success in that there's a lot of organizations that think they're Agile or somebody is processizing Agile, and it's not core Agile.
No.
There's these peripheral people now saying, oh, we're doing Agile, but it's not actually what we know to be good at Agile practices.
They're stuck in Agile hell with one flavor or another.
It is.
So another way of I'll get to you, I promise. So another way to think of this starting small, there's a thing called shu-ha-ri.
Of course.
And shu-ha-ri, you can think of it as those Tai Chi dancers, and they do an exact dance like every single day, right? And then they learn that muscle memory, and then that's shu. And in ha, they apply it. They're in a dojo together. You can't do the punch in the exact order, or the other guy or the woman knows what you're doing, right? So you have to vary it up, but you still have that muscle memory of what's a good punch, what's a good block. And then ri is you're developing your own punches, your own kicks. Let me take it in a non-confrontational, non-martial arts thing, just to, because it's a really neat concept for getting out of no trust hell. In shu, I get my HelloFresh meal with the ingredients, the exact ingredients that I need and the exact directions that I need. And in ha, I take those directions and I might vary them slightly, and I'll probably use different ingredients because I can't get the exact ingredients that HelloFresh delivered to me. And in ri, I've done so many soups through HelloFresh that now I know how I understand the chemistry that happens in a soup. So another way of starting small and getting out of no trust hell is to start with that shu, and you build yourself some rails, and you do your Tai Chi dance, you do your meal exactly by the directions, and you say, hey folks, for this window of time, let's call it 2 months, or it might be 2 weeks, or whatever you're going to have as a team agreement. Let's do things exactly by the book, and we'll deliver something small, and we'll earn that little bit of trust. And we'll get to the why when we get to ha, right? So we don't want to ignore ha,
Correct.
but in that initial stage, we want to answer what. So we talked about one solution for no trust hell is we start small, and the second one is establishing what. A little bit before we get to why.
Correct.
You had a comment?
I was just thinking the response to what you were just talking about is all centered around expectations. That's the why.
Right.
Setting expectations that are way too high. Setting expectations, because when you get into fever, you're looking at this is the solution for all of your problems.
Right.
It's not.
No, it's not.
Right.
And so setting those expectations, partly that builds all the trust because you can go into some other ways.
Right. Who's seen The Karate Kid?
Oh,
Right?
years ago.
Daniel wants to go to Ha. He wants to start fighting karate, and he doesn't have to understand why he has to paint the fence. And why does he have to wax the car, right? But then Mr. Miyagi brings him in, and he says, hit the fence! And he starts kicking at him, but Daniel can block, right? And he says, wax the car! And he's like, right? Because he went through Shu while fixing Mr. Miyagi's house. And then he went to Ha while Mr. Miyagi actually started applying it. Right? So it's part of the problem is we want to jump into why. That seems to make sense. Let's start off with the what.
And I love our suggestions of focusing on individuals and interactions over processes and tools, right? Listen first as you're interacting. Making sure that you're actually holding your own stance and not lying to your customer, but giving them reasonable expectations about what can be achieved. And then note that everything here is really all about kind of falseness, right? All about not sharing information clearly. And I think first you build the trust. You model transparency yourself, and then over time you begin introducing as much transparency, you begin requesting from the people around you as much transparency as their environment allows. But you pave the way with your delivery.
I think if you embody it yourself, then you don't even have to ask for it later. It comes back.
Yeah.
From
That's a
people.
great
I
point.
think
That's a great point. Yeah.
All right. Well, our next hell is product ownership hell.
I think that's pretty intuitive. We're talking about problems with our product owners. Sometimes they're too engaged, and sometimes they're not engaged enough. Sometimes they ask for too much.
All right. And our prompt here is, at this point, it's your third highest hell. So some people have already escaped. Some people have both experienced what it's like to get out of this hell. So let's share what you know. If you go into your app, you'll see a slightly different format here. You can actually use spaces. You can use a whole phrase and enter, how do you escape product owner hell? You'll see the suggestions that other people have typed in, and you have a chance to upvote them to say, yeah, that was a good one. I suggest that too. Okay? So how do you escape product ownership hell?
So, by the way, as we kind of said at the beginning, Dave and I work in government.
Find a new job, not a joke.
Yeah.
I mean,
So a solution for a lot of these, especially leadership hell, is update your resume. Hopefully that is not the necessary course, but sometimes.
Wait 4 years?
So Dave and I, our whole experience, our careers have been working for federal government in one way or another. That said, a lot of these things, I hope you feel the application in your own organizations, whether you're working for Capital One or whoever.
right. I think these are really large organization dynamics, and there's certainly enough large organizations in the DC area. So, common escapes from product ownership. Let's see. Not super easily. But at this point, we've got everything that has more than one vote that's listed at the top, and we'll see as you send in your responses. I can also scroll down as appropriate. I see several of you have talked about establishing communication between management and customer. Anyone want to tell a story about how you've used that technique to escape product ownership hell?
So we recently became, we're using the Safe Agile, so
Okay.
that's a whole other problem, I understand. But they essentially switched out everybody, so new product owners, new management, even new customer reps. So all the first couple of sprints, all the product owners were trained to know how to become a product owner. But we still had to deliver products and capabilities. So I still had a good relation with the previous customer rep and the previous product owner, who at least had enough passion for it to still give direction and how it was going. and then once they came on board, the new product owners were able to take back. But I mean, we've been like that for about 6 months, and just recently all the product owners just disappeared and didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
They training, vacation, and other things. So still working on the communication.
That's kind of perhaps the number one challenge with product ownership is not quite understanding how central and relatively all-consuming it can be. Often people think, well, this is, it's just a secondary duty. I'll do my full-time job, and then, 4 hours every 2 weeks, I'll help out as this product owner thing. And that's, of course, not at all what a product owner needs to do. Instead, a product owner should be spending, around 3 hours a day supporting the team, and around 3 hours a day getting to know the customer better, and identifying how they can delight them with the newest features delivered by the team. So that's really all-consuming. In your example, they thought they were product owners, and the organization thought they had provided product owners to the teams, and then they went completely on vacation, as it were, or out to class.
I think it's funny you say 3 hours, because that's exactly how much we get a week. Because it's between the sprint plan and then the midpoint meeting is about 3 hours a week.
Right. That's a particular problem in federal government, because the federal government will say, no, contractors cannot be product owners. We don't have enough product owner to our feds to go for every team. So at best, you'll get a product owner who's spread across like 8 different teams. But usually it's, as Dave described, it's like they have their main job, and oh, by the way, they're a product owner for 3 to 4 hours. So, go ahead.
But
Sorry.
Dave, that would be the scenario if you're doing T&M. If you got a fixed price contract, then you have no product owner at all. Am I right?
Well, actually,
the government
TSA
contracting.
It depends on the organization.
Correct.
So
primarily you got HLDR, right?
So
So you got the award, and then your team, or it's a fixed price contract, so your BA primarily is a product owner.
It can happen that way. At TSA, we had a firm fixed price Agile project, and we had product owners that we would engage with as we were bringing on new projects. One of our solutions was that for the less than active product owners, we went to the product owner's supervisor, and we had a product owner agreement. Again, just for super clarity, the product owner agreement was between the team and the product owner's supervisor saying, this requires a lot of time. It was pushed back because they're like, oh, this is not a binding agreement. You can't just do this because it has to go through legal and stuff. And we said, okay, hey legal folks, what if we tell people it's not legally binding? And we put that in the text, and we did that. We put in the text, this is not a binding agreement. Nevertheless, people would sign it, and attitudes completely changed because there was a thing on paper. Again, we said non-binding, but the supervisors would sign it. The team, usually a technical lead or the scrum master would sign it on behalf of the team. And now there was somebody saying, we need this person's time. I think we said within 10 minutes if the team has a question, right? And I think we said for 10 hours a week or something like that, right? We're trying to be reasonable with our request. But we got a whole lot more activity from our product owners. Product owners started showing up for daily stand-ups, which was a huge shift. We explained to them, I was about to say chickens and pigs. Does anybody? I'll explain chickens and pigs. Chickens and pigs. The idea is that you're opening up a restaurant, we're going to make ham and eggs. The pig is fully invested in ham and eggs, right? The chicken kind of contributes. So at different meetings, like at the daily stand-up, the product owner is a chicken. They're invited but not required. At sprint planning, the product owner now becomes the pig because they are absolute required for grooming, planning, and working on backlog.
And so notice that right here, vying for our number one slot is teaching, coaching, and setting boundaries. And what I love about Dave's story is that they created a process, even backed by a document, processes and documentation. Yeah, how agile is that? But it worked because it provoked a conversation. And that conversation, as soon as they put this agreement in front of the product owner's supervisor, caused a teaching and a coaching conversation, an appropriate setting of boundaries, in a way that too often we go directly to a product owner and expect that they are the captains of their fate. And usually they are part of a larger organization, just like anyone else. And so we provide some top cover by having that conversation with their boss. It really helps to have that same conversation up the appropriate chain of command, right? So you have an appropriate leader saying, hey guys, we're doing this Agile thing, we need product owners, this is the expectation of what a product owner is, at least in terms of general times. I love it, that you be able to supply an answer within around 10 minutes, 85% of the time. Wonderful.
Yeah. So I had actually engagement on one now, one of my product owners just wasn't really getting it and stuff. And, so I went to her and I said, hey, let's sit down and talk about your problems that you're bringing up, right? And so we scheduled a meeting and, hey, well, I have all these customer commitments that I can't meet. And I was like, well, how are you tracking your work? And she's like, oh, I don't have any way to track the work. So as we walked through them, we could actually tie the results that she wanted to the behaviors we were trying to get, right? And then we came up with a plan together to how we were going to approach the team and present this stuff. And so now she went from resisting that stuff to being engaged in it and helping to
I love
change
that.
those team behaviors.
It sounds like you kind of yes and, which was almost tied back to our previous thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And that's the kind of thing that I see the number one suggestion up there is a Scrum Master should be working with the product owner. And so that's the kind of thing we'd expect Scrum Masters to be doing, of working with the product owners, both serving them and helping them understand and deliver on their roles.
Dave, I think we need to go on to our next one.
All right.
But while you're doing that, I just want to mention that training product owners doesn't have to be a full class thing. It can be a executive briefing. I'm doing one this week where it's just a 2-hour briefing. Here's what we interpret as Agile and what we've heard is happening with your project. And it doesn't have to be the full 2-day product owner training.
Absolutely. The best way to learn is by doing. Right? So have a working session. So as we move on to the Stovepipe tell, so different parts of an organization that are struggling to collaborate with one another, to work successfully together. What do you think causes that kind of hell? Not even beyond the org chart, why did the organization lay out its structure that way? What causes people to fail to work successfully across organizational lines? And again, we're back to our one word. Spaces are not our friends here, but you can hyphenate if you need to join a couple words together.
Camille, were you stretching or did you have a question?
No, I'll just type it in.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Yeah. And if you see a word up there that you'd like to yes and, you'd like to double down on that, go ahead and type the same word. That will cause it to appear more larger on the screen.
Okay. While you're doing that, we're going to take a selfie. All right, Dave, get in there.
All right.
And
Get
you're
short.
going to get it down, yeah. You have to be as short as full. There you go.
All right. We'll be delighted to take an even better picture with you later.
One other technical note, if
Yes.
you put underscores in between the words, then it shows up as spaces on there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Awesome. Great catch.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so Stovepipe tell, and within the government, I think I've seen this with every single large organization. So I see number one problem is silos, that people tend to respect their boundaries, and it's Conway's law all over, which is essentially the proposition that if you look at an organization's source code, the actual code produced by an organization, you will see interfaces that mirror the organization's org chart. And the reasons for this is because if you think about it, you have different in my organization, there are different divisions, each of which support a separate system, each of which needs integrations.
Somebody create that?
Yeah.
Was that part of silos?
What was that? That wasn't me.
No, it's not part of silos. It's separate.
Excellent.
Flying minutes.
Yes. Money flying away. But so what we notice is
the color of money. Okay, I get it.
What we notice is a natural tendency for information to simply stop flowing as soon as it reaches the end of an organization. So it works within a team, information kind of pools within the team and doesn't flow over to other teams in the same org. And then you talk to another team leader or a scrum master on another team, and you say, well, this is what we've learned. And then you realize that the same thing, you're actually reinventing something that another part of the organization learned, but you didn't know that they'd already solved this problem. So this happens all the time.
I think you had started to have a question.
It's okay, I forgot.
Okay, cool.
All right, but that's really just a description of the problem. That's just being a problem. I see, for example, a lack of vision. It's now jumped around. There it is, above the smiley face.
Above the smiley face.
Lack of vision. That can be one cause. People kind of don't really have a larger sense of something to align to, and so instead they're aligning to their org chart, and they're aligning to the local knowledge they have. So one thing that leaders can do is always push down broader context. Guys, the major thing we're looking for here is, or our biggest business challenge is, and then repeating that as they move from organization to organization, or department to department within their organization. That is one way of beginning to defeat that siloing effect.
So somebody put up the money thing, and thank you, by the way. One of the things that I've felt as a federal employee, especially, even more than when I was a contractor, something they call the color of money. So this is a thing, especially in government contracting, that one type of money can only be used for one type of thing.
Yes.
So there's money that's designated for research, and there's money that's been set aside for actually building the thing. Well, which bucket of money is being used for software development? And they'll often say, oh, well, building your backlog, that's research. Actually, writing code, that's building the thing, right? So one of the escapes from that particular, because it's a very hard-coded thing, we got our budget from this thing, is having a cross-functional team where some of the team members are paid through this channel and some of the team members are paid through a second channel. Another one is, in almost every organization, there is a rainbow color of money. And it's at a high level, somebody has to approve it. So it might be that you have to have a GS-15 say, yes, you can use rainbow money for your particular project. So there's a couple of ways that you can get around that budgetary issue of siloing.
We call that the working capital fund.
Excellent. So I noticed that some, back in the suggestions here, I see empires, fiefdoms, boundaries, and there's one more that basically boils down to central control. And this can be a significant problem when you have one leader who really sees an us versus them scenario. So when you're in that kind of stovepipe hell, you're actually in a version of leadership hell. So ideally, you can see if you can have an appropriate level of access to enter into a coaching relationship with that leader and say, what are the strengths of this person that I can yes and in a more positive direction, right? There's a degree of no trust hell where you can say, well, our organization doesn't trust other organizations. How can we work small and deliver incrementally to build trust between organizations? But even just as an individual person, one of the biggest escapes from stovepipe hell is forming personal relationships. Just that first value of the Agile Manifesto, individuals and interactions. See if you can spend some time with people from another organization, know them by name, and begin to transform them from that independent testing group to Joe, right? I should go ask Joe about this. And that begins to break through the silo, at least on a small individual level.
Dave, we got to move on, unfortunately, because we're trying to get through a lot of these hells. But a couple of the escapes we talked about is, one is bridging gaps between organizations, forming those relationships, and another one of the escapes was going to a higher authority that both organizations answer to.
All right. So now we're entering into our fifth and the last hell that we've committed to, which is no transformation hell. I'm sorry, that's our sixth hell. Too fast hell is our number 5 hell. And so too fast hell happens when the organization is constantly pivoting it's constantly pivoting. A new emergency shows up every day and they move to the new emergency. But at the end of the time, they sit back and say, well, you know, we had these plans and we're never progressing against our plans. So what do you think keeps an organization in too fast hell?
Keeps it there, because if you're going too fast around a turn, you're done with the turn, right? Pretty quickly, you experience those G-forces, and then you're done. But if teams feel sprint after sprint or week after week, depending on what paradigm you're using, why do you feel like you've maintained that too fast hell?
So in one organization that I have worked in, we experienced this. We thought we were doing fine. That was the interesting dynamic of too fast hell, is you're thinking to yourself, wow, we're really agile. You know, we're handling all the curveballs that the organization is throwing us. But we needed to step back and look a bit at our roadmap and then actually discuss, why is it that we are feeling really agile but not actually progressing towards the milestones that we told other people that we'd be meeting?
Right. And that really appeals to one of the biggest words, which was no vision. Thanks for whoever used the underscore. So that no vision, so reminding folks of this is what our thing is, and things that are offset of that might have value, but not necessarily to this group. And we have to put it on the backlog and save it for later.
Yeah. I do think when a leader is clearly articulating a vision and it's repeated throughout the organization, that's one way of beginning to escape too fast hell. Now, a separate escape that we've seen demonstrated was we saw one coach who made it a point to be very clear about trade-offs. So her product owner came to her and said, hey, we have this new priority, team needs to swarm to this. And she'd say, okay, we can certainly do that. We are currently pursuing this separate path. So just to be clear, you're asking us to stop doing that and instead do this other thing. So making the trade-offs very transparent, very clear. That is what helped make sure that there wasn't no slack. I love that, because often people just take on more work and more work. Oh yeah, we'll do all that we were doing and we'll pivot to the new emergency. Being very clear about the trade-offs helps fight that.
Dave, you get it. So the situation why we keep getting stuck, I have on paper, I have 3 developers counting myself, and one of them is a database engineer, so he doesn't really code, but we make him code. And then my other developer is on 2 other teams, independent of my team. So when we do sprint planning, my points are spread out. Looks like everyone's committed, but it's the end of another sprint, and I'm the only one who's knocked out tasks. And it's because my database guy's supporting other things, and my dev is in India for a month. So,
right.
You got a problem.
And yeah, you have perhaps a pervasive problem that's going beyond simply an organization that thinks it can pivot faster than it really can. And part of that is simply just the total work in progress, the number of different things that they're trying to juggle simultaneously, and a little bit of perhaps lack of visibility, of thinking that they've got 3 projects staffed, and actually they've got 1 project worth of staff that's triple committed.
Yes, exactly.
And so some visibility may help with that particular one. Dave, do you have any stories about too fast hell?
So specifically, it's pretty much what you described, which is when I was part of DHS's ALMSS team, we basically ran JIRA for all the departments of Homeland Security. And I was the Scrum Master. Eventually, the product owner, who was really just a senior stakeholder, kept giving us totally different direction. And what we did was we stopped being Scrum and we started being Kanban so that we could make those adjustments. And I was not allowed to say, okay, we're dropping this thing because you added this new thing. I would accept those things, and then the project manager above me, who is a very suave kind of person, would politely go in and say, hey, just so you know, the team dropped thing C because you added thing D, and the team can only do so much at one time. But it's very much just making it visible, maybe not directly. Go ahead, George.
You mean dropped like, was in progress and dropped? Or
Yeah, so part of that is the LMSS team, there were bugs. So JIRA would do an update. We were on-prem for a web-based solution, so we would get our update, then there would be bugs, but Jira didn't fix them for us because we were on-prem. So we had to fix those things. And
On premises? Or
yeah, so
on-prem?
it's complicated, on premises.
Right.
But the point is, we had to own our own solutions, and so we had to do a lot of development work on this enterprise solution.
And I love a lot of the suggestions that have come in from not learning from mistakes, right? Already we have some built-in structures within Scrum where you can have retrospectives and observe, hey, we've failed to deliver on our commitments 3 sprints, 5 sprints, 6 sprints in a row. What are we going to do to change that? A lot of people have talked about prioritization as one of the key ways of escaping. There was a terrific observation that came up, which is said, no real customer. There it is, no real customer.
Oh,
and that is a terrific one, particularly in the government, because sometimes we struggle to understand who is the person or organization or kind of person that benefits from the work that we do. And so spending a little bit of time and creating a vivid understanding of that customer and ideally going to see them do their work.
You know what, I'd forgotten, but that was another one of our problems with ALSS was because a ticket would come in and we would start working on it before even reporting it to our product owner, especially if it's late at night or on the weekend, because we had a work-life balance thing, right, where it's okay to get a little bit of life done during work, it's okay to get a little bit of work done while you're at home. And so, well, because our actual product owner, or the person on paper wasn't available, that project manager that I talked about, the contract person, was the person that we would say, hey, we're going to do this trade-off. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So having that feedback, somebody who can actually give permission, that you can actually ask. There is a division that revolutionized what they were doing by sending members of their development teams and some of their product owners out onto the sites, the locations around the country where the software was being used. And they said, when we did that, our developers came back re-energized. They all of a sudden had a very clear sense of who is the government employee who's using the software and the members of the general public who are affected by that. They realized, wow, if we screw something up, people who have taken days out of their work life, traveled hundreds of miles, might have to go home and come back another time, or they might be fired, or they might not, or they might even be deported. All of these are examples where if you build a real sense of your customer, all of these trade-offs become a lot clearer, and it's a lot easier to have a vision that gets you out of too fast hell.
So to review, one of our big escapes from too fast hell is making trade-offs visible. What was
having a strong vision.
Oh, yes, and having a strong vision.
And we were just pointing out that having a strong relationship with the customer, actual experience with the customer, is one of the things that help fuel that vision and gives you a chance to have that trade-off conversation.
So unfortunately, we don't have time for our 6th hell. So what we're going to do, though, is now we're going to do a quick review of what we've talked about.
All right. Let's go. We had a stretch hell that lined up. And tell you what, we'll.
If you want to talk about any of the hells that we did not talk about, you can feel free to reach out to us. Somebody sent me a LinkedIn request during this presentation, so I'm guessing that's one of y'all. Feel free to connect with us, and we'll be giving this at Agile 2019. We're going to be giving it at Agile DC. We're going to give we're hoping to give it. We haven't heard back from Southern Fried Agile, so probably there as well. That's Charlotte, North Carolina. Everybody's going to come to Charlotte, right?
All right. So let's recap some of the escapes that we've talked about. We talked for leadership hell. Our primary one is play to the strengths of the leader, right? Yes, and what they're doing. For no trust hell, start small, deliver, and then repeat with increased trust. You also talked about shu-ha-ri, starting with some guardrails as a good thing to do.
What
within
as
no
opposed
trust
to what?
hell. For product owner hell, iteratively set expectations, and I love this example from Dave's experience. Don't just set it with your product owner, set it with the product owner's boss as well. Number 4 is stovepipes. Dave, do you want to?
Sure, and Stovepipe is let's forge those relationships with the other organizations, and then the other one is going to a higher authority so that I have guardrails here. I'm not supposed to move out of, so that way the other people can see me. Sorry, otherwise I'm the other way. I'll go this way.
There we go.
So form those relationships, but sometimes go to a higher authority.
And too fast help.
And too fast to make those trade-offs visible and maintain a vision as we move along through these things.
Outstanding. So our talk is not done. I actually have some work for you guys. Okay. So if you're ready, hopefully everyone has at least something that they could write on, such as the index cards we handed out at the beginning. If anybody needs more index cards, I think we can come up with some real quick. Just raise your hand if you need a pen or something to write on.
Sure. I just want to use cool Excel pens. I'm going to step out of the screen.
Oh, thanks.
Here you go.
That's fantastic.
There you go.
All right.
Who needs an Excel pen? All right, there you go.
Yeah, I've been to Excel.
All right.
By the way, for what's work, I've been to training here a couple of times. It is a great group for when they host training. So just throwing it out there. I like it.
All right.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Yeah.
Somebody needing a pen?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to try to toss it to you and hopefully not get you any. Great catch. Great catch.
I'm just letting you
Now, is this something you want us to take home or something you want
This
us to give you?
You do not need to give this to us. This is for your own use.
Okay.
And so the question is, who are you going to tell? So think about your organization, the people you work with, of the things you heard today, the different hells and their escapes, who in your organization will you tell? Go ahead and write down a name. This is for you to take home. You don't need to turn it in. So no privacies, just work. And write down who you're going to tell and maybe give 2 or 3 bullets. What would you like to tell them?
It works if you just try the pen.
Some extra pencils, some of this out.
Yeah, this one's working now. I tested it.
Whatever makes sense of what we've talked about and written that makes sense for your organization. We'll give you some time. So who in your organization are you talking with?
Well, so actually today I talked with my boss Ty, and by the way, I so I did the starting small thing. We're still building trust. I had an acquisition class. I'm good on the Agile. I worked for Defense Acquisition University. I still don't know a lot about acquisition. I got a 63% on the test that I was supposed to take. I said, Ty, I failed my test. And he said, well, you know what? Keep trying, but let me know when you're halfway through the class, and then we'll talk some more. So, we're starting small. It was his idea. Like, tell me when you're halfway through.
Outstanding. So at this point, hopefully now you've made yourself a note about who in your organization you talk to. You've written it down, a couple of bullets that you've encountered during this discussion that you might want to talk about. Now this is something you actually do have to share. Not with me, but maybe the person next to you. I'd like you to turn to somebody nearby and share the most important escape that you've heard of or you've experienced. So think of a difficult Agile help. Think of a difficult organizational problem and the solution that has worked for you. And if it's also okay to reuse, you can steal from other people.
Or one that resonated with you that we spoke about today, something that you're going to do, and talk about that thing you're going to try.
Okay. So if you would, please turn to somebody nearby. All right, look around. It's okay to make eye contact. Point and share what is the most important escape you have.
That's all they do. we just want to open up for about maybe just 5 minutes of Q&A, and then if there's other questions outside of that time box, we'll be hanging around for a while. And then, again, feel free to look us up on LinkedIn.
Go ahead, George. Who are these product owners who are too involved?
I think sometimes they call this project managers.
Yes, seriously. So here's a thing that I have found and seen and heard about is that a lot of people think that there's no job security when you do an Agile transformation. And I think that's true. You do not have job security when you're doing an Agile transformation. You'll have paycheck security, but your job may change. And so what sometimes happens is the project managers become product owners, and they want to be command and control. And I've also seen a lot of people who were project managers, and then they're like, well, that's basically the Scrum Master role and the product owner role combined, so I can just do both of those things, right? And so then they're doing a lot of those things themselves.
Don't union contracts in government?
Say again?
Don't union contracts make a good difference to that, though? Like, you can't just change somebody's job.
Yeah, yes and no.
Most folks are contractors.
Right.
They can do whatever they want to.
Yeah, that phrase, other duties as assigned, works fairly well, but you're dead on that tends to interfere, in particular if you have a representative from the business, somebody who's actually working with the software that you're trying to build changes for, and they use it all day long, or they supervise people who use it. Often they'll be remote. They won't actually be in the DC area, but they'll be somewhere else in the country. They can make great product owners, but except for the fact that they have other demands on their time. And so negotiating what does that role look like can be a difficult one. And their union rules do play in. And so just kind of informing everyone, these are the expectations, and then asking the government, and ideally the project sponsor, to help you sort out. Because the project sponsor is invested in this actually being delivered, right? And so that sponsor can help you get, both set the expectations, try the project, what did you call it, product owner contract?
Yeah.
Product owner contract, and get it reviewed by your product owner's supervisor. Did you have a question or a suggestion?
Well, sort of relates to a couple of these things, since a lot of people here are working with government, and you've talked about the Defense Acquisition Agency. And a university, yes, sorry. And a huge amount of problems within the government space. Somewhat in commercial, but not as much, is the contract. The contract is written in such a way that instead of getting the right people for the job, the way things are rewarded is they're rewarded by bottoms and seats. So in many cases, they hire the cheapest folks they can find, and just have more and more and more of them, as opposed to the right folks. And it used to be that they also had this laundry list, which has gotten a little better, of requirements, but there's still that mentality out there.
Contracting for features instead of contracting for the ability to build whatever feature is prioritized.
Yes, and so to help change that.
Yeah. So that's now Dave's responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, so there's a risky thing that I did as for a window of time while I was at TSA. I was the product owner and the government project manager. I was clearly not the Scrum Master, right? But I had those two roles. And I said to the team, you are the product. The team is the product. What we will produce in 6 sprints from now, in 12 sprints from now, your ability to do whatever that will be is the product. And so I extend to you an offer. Make whatever user stories you want to suggest to me for improving the team, because you are butts and seats. You did not come in here as, I'm calling a spade, but you are not senior level tier 3 developers, right? So if you need to improve, you say, like one of the guys said, look, I've never done .NET, I've only done Java. Well, you know what? Take all the time that you need. Within some reason, you can assist, you can pair program, thank you. You can pair program and develop your skills in that way. But remember, You, the team, are the product. And by the way, during that furlough thing that happened, my boss gave me a huge pat on the back because my particular team was the only one that they didn't have to check on nearly daily basis. They said, here's what we understand was on your backlog when Dave left. And they're like, yep. And then they would send him an email because the people who were left from the furlough, I don't know if you don't know how that worked, but they were just like, yeah, so it was essential personnel. So we had about a tenth of our personnel. They didn't have time to go to all the stand-ups. They had an email saying, this is what we discussed at our stand-up.
And for people in the DHS realm, Department of Homeland Security's Procurement Innovation Lab is a great resource that has been working through some of these challenges. As a contractor, I will note that all the solutions do not lie in getting better contractors.
No,
It's
that's
absolutely
one aspect.
It's a system effect, and often it's a matter of getting the government people and our partners, everyone involved in the system, to realize that we're in this together. And that's where that vision absolutely makes a difference.
Can I do the capstone thing, please? So, on that note, I'm a bit passionate about this. We really do need more feds who are passionate about Agile. Please consider applying for a federal employment so that you can be a gatekeeper. It's not as much fun as going through a gate and delivering things, but we need more people who get it as gatekeepers. All right, now I think Mark and Brian, they have stuff to say and do.
Sure, come.
And we'll be available again for more Q&A.
So, thank you, Dave and Dave. That was a great presentation.
You're outside.
I'm outside. I made the box. So, thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate your participation. You can, this is live streamed, recorded, so you can always go back and watch it. And of course, you can always keep tabs on our meetup group to find out what interesting things we have coming up in the future. So, thanks again, Dave and Dave. We do have some giveaways tonight, so let me grab this. So we asked the Daves what if they had any ideas about a giveaway for tonight, and they both very kindly recommended this book, Turn the Ship Around. So
Is this written by a Dave?
Oh, I didn't realize that was the criteria.
So truth be told, I think it's for the two of us. That is our favorite book. We might have a different book individually, but we quote that fairly often. So we do love the book, but good coincidental.
I recommend it even if it was written by a
Mark.
But it's written by
And this one?
All right. So, Carolyn Mraz.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, how about that? All right. Congratulations.
We have one more.
And so that's the DC Stud usually gives away a book, but the Daves also have a book that they want to give away. And the book that they are giving away is?
It is Dante's Inferno.
S.A.? It just says S.A.?
Have to be here to win.
And we can read them, and it says SA in the back, and the numbers, the last three digits of the numbers are 827.
Oh, that's
9827.
Yeah, that's
Ah, very good. All right.
Your own special guide to 9 levels of hell.
Yeah.
There you go.
I understand it's
apply it every
dated.
day.
Yeah. It's a heavy read.
Okay, don't forget, if you have any feedback for us in terms of the event, whether it was the food, the room, anything else, please put a card. There's
The Daves.
the Daves. If you have feedback for the Daves, they're going to be giving this talk again. If you have any suggestions for how they might improve that, I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
There's a bowl out in the lobby with cards and pens, so on your way out, if you would, please. There's still some food left, so please go and help yourselves. We do a lot of meetings like this here, and we tend to have a surplus of leftover food, so as much as we really appreciate it, we actually can't consume it all. So please help yourselves, and if you want to take a few to go, please make yourself a little go kit.
Quick question. You said that the live streams are recorded,
They
and
are.
therefore they're saved somewhere?
Yes.
And where is that?
So to get to the live streams, go to the meetup.
After the fact.
Right. So go to the meetup page. go to the live stream. So there are 2 events for each one of these, right? The live and the live stream. So you go to the live stream, follow the link, and that will put you right on to the recording.
Okay, so that will
It'll also be on,
Yep.
That's where you're.
I think,
they sell a YouTube channel as well.
Really? There's an Excel.
Yeah, and we moved, so note that that's moved to, there's a DC Sug user YouTube channel. So yeah, when you go to that link, you can subscribe to the channel and you'll see any new ones that we have coming up, plus all the archived ones are on there.
and I think you can even just go to YouTube and search,
Probably.
right?
yeah.
DC Sug in the topic and it might come up, so. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
I didn't recognize you.